Ah, Mr. Bond, I've been expecting you. Hi folks, how you doing? It's James, JT at the movies. And this is a little offshoot to my Debriefing 007 series, I suppose. It'll sort of nicely go in with it. This is a little video that I'm calling License to Collect. This is an in-depth look at my James Bond movie collection. I want to show you my James Bond movie collection. This is all the various different formats that I have the James Bond movies in. And what better way to start than at the very beginning with the VHS box set. As you can see there, folks, once I open up the front of this, we have the first 17 James Bond videos, at least the first 17 official James Bond videos. So this set is actually something that I picked up in a charity shop nearly about 10 years ago, and is something to replace the videotapes that we had sort of growing up when I was a kid, as I was sort of getting really into James Bond and wanting to collect all the different versions of it. My dad had most of the Sean Connery ones and a couple of the Pierce Brosnan ones growing up from this sort of collection that you can see in front of us. But I wanted the whole thing, and this was a £5 in the charity shop near where I work, and so I thought, do you know what? Yeah, I'm going to pick that up. It looks really great on the shelf as a bit of a backdrop piece, and it's just really great. I have still got some of my VHS tapes from growing up, and a handful of Dad's too, but not all of them. Some of them are up in the loft, but they're not in anywhere near as good a condition as this. Surprisingly, although you might not believe it, some of those VHS tapes are still in the cellophane inside, which is brilliant for sort of like preservation and collecting purposes, because realistically, I'm not likely to want to go and watch them on VHS. I did actually think about it the other week when I was doing one of the Debriefing 007 episodes for Octopussy. I thought, wouldn't it be really curious to see the sort of just how drastically the picture quality's changed from VHS to the Blu-ray that I'd be watching it on. But in the end, I decided to leave it in as it was. Let's jump into some DVDs. Next up, we have the 007 Special Edition DVDs. This set's been around a while, hasn't it? You can tell by the state of that box there. But let me open it up for you now. Just going to have to hope that that doesn't slam shut all of a sudden. But as you can see, largely the same sort of artwork as the VHSs that we've just looked at least the same logos, and that is Dr. No through to Die Another Day. And when they're all together, they make the 007 logo as an emblem across all the spines. This was the first time as Bond fans we really got anything in the way of special features with the movies, and we got the behind-the-scenes documentaries, the Inside series as it's called on the DVDs, right up to License to Kill. And for any Bond fan growing up and wanting to know more about these movies, it was an absolute treasure trove. Of course, when we got the Ultimate Edition DVDs, which I'll show you in a moment, we got even more, but this was absolutely the start of what became special features in the James Bond world with these sets, and they really were living up to the name of being special editions. So at this point is where I started getting individual DVD releases for the Ultimate Edition, and I collected these as they came out, and then our local supermarket, Morrison's, had these reduced to £2 and £3 at a time, so I bought most of them then. The picture quality was the best that it had ever been. It far exceeded the special editions that I'd shown you even just from a few years before. I have got all 20 of the original Bonds in those cases there, but they are up and alphabetised in with the collection that you see behind you, and I didn't want to get them all out, so I just picked out a couple of favourites to show you this variant of the releases. Then in 2012 we got the 50th anniversary of the cinematic James Bond franchise, and we also got the release of Skyfall in the cinemas and later on home media. To commemorate that, the Eon Productions team decided that they were going to release all the James Bond films on Blu-ray for the first time. A handful had been released before in a Blu-ray box set that I'll show you in just a short little while. But this was the first time that all 23 films, as it were at that time, had been available in one box set. Now, this is the first pressing of that box set, where there was a space left for the Skyfall disc when it was eventually released, and then later pressings of it obviously included Skyfall once it came out. For the first 20 films in the series, this is the best that they've ever looked, and it's also the most recent remaster for all of those 20 films. The Daniel Craig films have been remastered for 4K, with Casino Royale even getting a slightly extended version released onto 4K, which I will show you in a box set that I've got in just a moment's time. But I'll be interested to see whether or not, when No Time to Die comes out on physical media, whether or not we get the full back catalogue on 4K. I don't know that I'd rush into buying all of them on 4K straight away, but I'd certainly pick up the likes of From Russia with Love, License to Kill, Octopussy, Tomorrow Never Dies, for just calling some of them out that are some of my favourites in the series. So as you can see here, these are the individual releases of Casino Royale, Quantum of Solace, Skyfall and Spectre that are available on Blu-ray. I picked up the Casino Royale one probably around 2010. I have got the standard edition that I had for many years that I got when I got my PlayStation 3, which was my first Blu-ray player. The Quantum of Solace is the one that I picked up when I got Blu-ray, and then obviously Skyfall and Spectre are the release day issues. Now, before we get into some of the sort of the odds and ends of my 007 collection, I suppose I'll show you the most recent acquisition that I've got 007 related. It was actually a present from my mum and her husband, Christmas just gone, and it is the 4K releases of the Daniel Craig films thus far: Casino, Quantum, Skyfall and Spectre. I've only watched Casino Royale from the series on 4K so far, as I've actually been waiting to watch them for when I do my Debriefing 007 episodes, but I was really giddy to see what the picture quality looked like and put Casino Royale on over Christmas. Spoiler alert, if you've not seen the PQ on this, it is fantastic. But I'm really looking forward to diving into Quantum, Skyfall and Spectre over the summer as I finish up my Debriefing 007 series. As I said in the last one, I've really better get my finger out, really, because No Time to Die comes out in September, and as I'm shooting this, it's mid-June, and my next review to release is A View to a Kill, so I really had better get my finger out, because I'm only about halfway through at the moment, aren't I? And as it mentions here, if you can see on the front of the packaging there, it includes for the first time the extended version of Casino Royale in 4K UHD. As you can see there in front of me, I do also have all 24 films on individual Blu-ray releases. So these releases came out around the time that Spectre did. Previously to that, the only way to get them all on Blu-ray was in the Bond 50 box set that I showed you earlier in this video. But actually, just over the last 12 months and over the lockdown, I decided that I wanted to pick them up individually. The Bond 50 box set is a brilliant set and a great display piece, but the way that the discs are stored in it, for me, when you're getting them out regularly, they could be quite easy to damage, and they're only held in little cardboard sleeves, and I much prefer a Blu-ray or a DVD bin in a proper plastic tray where it's sort of optimum level of protection, as it were. And then Poundland started getting these titles in, so I picked up a majority of them in Poundland for a couple of pence a go. And then with some vouchers that my work gave me and gave all of us colleagues as a thank you for working, you know, throughout all the trials and tribulations that we've all been through for the last 12 months, I was able to complete the rest of the collection, and I now have them all on the individual releases as well. They're in their own little stand, which is absolutely great. I really like having the individual releases, as I say, because then when I feel like, oh, I'll just put Moonraker on, I don't need to get the whole box set out and flip to that page, and I can just get the individual case and pop that on. The next two things that I've got here to show you are Everything or Nothing, the story of James Bond 007. And that came out around the same time that Skyfall did, and the Bond 50 and the 50th anniversary celebrations. And it is the story in documentary form of the cinematic journey of James Bond up to and including the release of Skyfall. It has interviews, new interviews, with 5 of the 6 James Bonds. There was only Sean Connery that chose not to participate. And it's quite sort of an interesting watch, really, and sort of the commentaries from Brosnan and Dalton in particular are really quite sort of eye-opening, and you know, you can show just... and you can see just how much each bloke enjoyed playing the part and enjoyed their tenure as James Bond. You can even see some of the regretting with Brosnan that he didn't get to come back and do a 5th entry, which is a shame. I would have liked to have seen him go out on a better film than Die Another Day, which is admittedly my least favourite of the official series. But, I mean, if he hadn't have done, we might not have got Casino Royale, so I suppose you've got to look at these things and weigh them up, haven't you? The other thing that we've got there on the left is the Spectre Edition Blu-ray of You Only Live Twice. So rather than buying the Standard Edition Blu-ray that you've just seen there, actually before Spectre came out, HMV, and I'm sure all the international resellers will have done this, but HMV was the UK one, got in these cover variants where it was the title sequence on the front and it was the Spectre series. So any film where James Bond had had an interaction with Spectre got one of these special edition cases with the title sequence art on instead. So when I came to buying the individual releases, obviously opted not to get the standard You Only Live Twice, as I have the disc in there and I much prefer that slipcover art. Did somebody say unofficial? Well, here we are, folks. Here's the real anomaly of the James Bond series. So, due to Ian Fleming being really, really keen to get the James Bond films on the big screen for audiences to see, he made some really questionable deals that led to the existence of these two films here. So he signed away the rights to Casino Royale to an American company to adapt it into a live teleplay for their series Climax, which came out in 1954. And it was an absolute butchering of the source material and just strayed so far from it. The only things it really kept were the characters of James Bond, Le Chiffre, and the fact that the majority of the action, if you like, is set in a casino. Other than that, like I said, they completely butchered the source material. But that then left the rights open with an American company. They eventually ended up developing that version of Casino Royale that you see in front of us there. So they didn't want to go head-to-head with the actual Eon franchise, and obviously Sean Connery being at the peak of his fame and sort of popularity as James Bond at that time. They decided to lampoon it completely and made a stupid comedy, and it's so bad that I don't even think there's a redeeming feature about it. I only have it in the collection because I'm a completist and it's something to do with James Bond. The next one that you can see I've got two editions of. I've got the DVD edition that I had for years, and then I've got the Blu-ray edition, which again came out in 2012 around the time of Skyfall and the 50th anniversary. This was a real Bond year, was 2012, and I'm hoping that 2022 next year is going to be a similar sort of year and that we're going to get some real great Bond goodies. But yes, never say never again. So Ian Fleming, again, in his attempts to bring James Bond to the big screen and get him turned into an action star and basically what he is today, he partnered up with a chap called Kevin McClory, and there was another chap as well, I believe, Jack Whittingham was his name, and correct me in the comments if I've got the third chap's name wrong. But they came up with a treatment for a film where James Bond went up against a secret organisation known as Spectre. And in that film, nuclear missiles were stolen, the world was held to ransom, Bond had to go to exotic locations, and it all climaxed in a massive underwater battle. They couldn't get that script looked at for love nor money. Nobody was interested in making a James Bond film. So what did Ian Fleming do? He went and took elements from that script and turned it into the novel Thunderball. Now his collaborators, they didn't get a co-writing credit. They didn't even get a mention in the acknowledgements. So of course Kevin McClory and co took Ian Fleming to court and actually settled for the film rights. So when it came time to make Thunderball in the mid-1960s, Eon Productions, Saltzman and Broccoli decided that they would team up with Kevin McClory and allow him to make the official version of Thunderball, which would be a more successful venture for everybody involved. But it would mean that he had the clause that he couldn't make his own version of the film with the rights that he had for at least 10 years. So then in the mid-70s, once that time period had elapsed, Kevin McClory contacted Sean Connery again, and Len Deighton, who actually wrote the Harry Palmer series and started work on what would eventually become Never Say Never Again. The final film being written by Lorenzo Semple Jr. And directed by Irving Kershner, of all people, from Empire Strikes Back fame. So absolutely just a real bizarre thing. They got Sean Connery to come back and play James Bond. The title is derived from the fact that after Diamonds Are Forever, Connery said that he would never play Bond again. His wife said, well, never say never. And so the tongue-in-cheek joke became the title. It's a real odd piece of a film, is this, because it tries to be a legitimate James Bond film, but it can't use any of the tropes and the cliches almost that we would expect in a traditional James Bond film. There's no Bond theme, there's no gun barrel sequence, you know, we've got obviously different actors playing M, Q, Moneypenny, and the dynamic's not the same, but Connery feels the same because obviously it's Connery, so it's a real interesting sort of thing. There's so many books and documentaries and all sorts of things that have been written about and talked about with this film, so there's a real treasure trove of information to delve into there if it's something that you feel that you want to have a look at further. So this is a Sky Atlantic release here in the UK. I'm sure it was released by other providers internationally, but it is Dominic Cooper in Fleming, the man who would be Bond, and this is a dramatisation and a real exaggeration of Ian Fleming's time in the war, and essentially sort of telling the tale that he was James Bond before he wrote James Bond. So it is partially based on the truth, but there's a lot of it that's exaggerated and, you know, things added to sort of bulk it up and make it feel a bit more adventurous than perhaps it might have been in real life. They get to use little elements from the official series, like the Bond theme occasionally plays if he does something Bondian, but largely it's just a fantasy piece. It doesn't really bear much resemblance to James Bond other than the occasional little nods and winks. In fact, they sort of have a scene at the end where they're sort of like, well, I'm going to name the character in my book and I'm going to do it based on the game that we used to play when we were at boarding school, you know, where I'd take so-and-so's name and mix it up with my name, and so instead of me being Ian Fleming and them being John Smith, I'd be Ian Smith and they'd be John Fleming, and basically he reckoned on that he had somebody called Harry Bond and James something else, and he swapped them round to get James Bond. But any Bond fan knows that when Fleming was writing at GoldenEye in Jamaica, one of the books that he had out there to read himself was Birds of the West Indies by James Bond. James Bond obviously being the author's name, and he thought that the name sounded plain enough that it wouldn't sound sort of too extravagant for a super spy, because he really wanted an ordinary sounding name, and so that's where the actual inspiration for James Bond came from. But it's a fun couple of 3 hours, is that there. There's I don't know, 4 or 5 episodes if I remember rightly, and it's an interesting little tidbit, a little side sort of note, if you like, to the James Bond series. So as I mentioned earlier in the video, the first time any James Bond films were released on Blu-ray, they came out in this set where there was a real random smattering of them. There's no real sort of rhyme or reason to the films that they've chosen there, but we've got Dr. No, From Russia With Love, Thunderball, For Your Eyes Only, Live and Let Die, and Die Another Day. So yeah, like I say, just a real sort of smattering, if you like, and I'm not entirely sure why those films were picked. I would have probably picked other films. I'm surprised Goldfinger wasn't on there, and like I say, GoldenEye maybe as well, Spy Who Loved Me. I just think that there were more obvious choices, but this came out around 2008, 2009, sort of when Blu-ray started to become popular amongst sort of home media enthusiasts such as myself. I remember picking this up in an HMV sale as, like I say, my introduction into James Bond, but it's soon become redundant with the release of the Bond 50 set and then obviously the subsequent individual releases. So just 2 more things to show you now, and this is the first one. It is a Japanese LaserDisc of Roger Moore's final effort, A View to a Kill. I picked this up at a comic convention of all places. And I wasn't actually going to get it, but my good mate Lyndon, who I think watches the channel, and we've been friends since we were 4 years old, he says to me, you'll regret that if you don't get it. And the idea is eventually that I'm going to get it framed on the wall. But yeah, I don't have any of the other official ones as a LaserDisc. I've got Never Say Never Again, which I'm going to show you in just a second. So there we are, folks. That is Never Say Never Again on LaserDisc. Again, picked this up at another comic convention. I think the guy wanted a £5 for it. And I just thought, well, do you know what, as a unique piece of Bond history, why not? I'll pick it up. So there we are, folks. That has been my tour of my James Bond DVD, Blu-ray, VHS, 4K, LaserDisc collection of the James Bond series. I do hope that you've enjoyed it. Leave me a comment down below with your thoughts. James Bond is my favourite film series of all time, and if you've been around for a while, you probably already know that. I do hope you've enjoyed this video. Leave me your thoughts down below in the comments, and if you want to see me talking more about the James Bond franchise, then head over to my channel and have a look for the Debriefing 007 playlist, where I'm currently reviewing all the James Bond films, both official and unofficial when I get round to them, in the run-up to the release of No Time to Die this September. So there's going to be a lot more of those videos coming out over the summer. At the moment, we're up to Octopussy, and A View to a Kill is going to be coming out very, very, very soon. It's all filmed and it's in editing, so look out for that. In fact, by the time this one hits YouTube, it might already be out, you never know. But I'm definitely going to be releasing all of those videos up to the release of No Time to Die this September. So yeah, we'd love to have you stick around for those videos. I might even have some special guests as we get into the Brosnan and the Craig era as well, as they're a lot of my friends' sort of favourite era of Bonds, and I think it'd be great to have some discussions as well. But thanks very much for watching this video, folks. I really appreciate you watching. Take care of yourselves, and I look forward to seeing you again next time.